Hey, good people. Grits or cream of wheat? Who the hell is racist? Does anyone ever ask if they touch your hair?
Black Like Me.
You're listening to Black Like Me with Dr. Alex G., a podcast that invites you to experience the world through the perspective of one black man, one conversation, one story, or even one rant at a time. Here's Dr. G.
Black Like Me.
Hey, good people. I want to welcome you back to an exciting episode of Black Like Me with Dr. Alex G. And as I tell you each week, I keep working to bring you exciting, insightful interviews that help us to think about race and how we navigate race and build bridges to each other as citizens of this country. And so today I've got a real special guest, and I've been looking forward to this for really some time now. Today, my guest is Mr. Kyle Korver of the Milwaukee Bucks, plays a small forward and shooting guard, played college at Creighton University. Although people may not say this all the time, he's one of the best three-point shooters of all time, actually fourth in all time. He holds the NBA record for three-point percentages in a season, .536 in 2009 and 2010. The 2015 NBA All-Star member, and he's also named the Sportsmanship Award in 2015. We're really glad to have him in our state. Milwaukee's only about 75 miles from us here in Madison. Kyle, man, it is great to have you here. Welcome to Black Like Me podcast.
I appreciate you, brother. Thanks for having me.
No, I'm glad to have you here. Now, listen, we work to not discriminate here at Black Like Me, Kyle. And so I have these black icebreakers that I ask people at the beginning of every show. So some of them may be pertinent, some of them aren't, but I would be remiss by not asking you them.
Come on.
So I'm going to ask you one that I ask everyone: grits or cream of wheat?
Grits.
Grits. Okay. All right. I knew we were going to get along. I'm assuming butter in the grits, but are you a salt or sugar guy?
I am a salt person, actually, over sugar, and so that also applies to this. Yes.
Okay, I got you. Let me see. Do you know any of the benefits of cocoa butter?
I know it makes my skin really smooth when I put on that lotion. That's probably the extent of my knowledge.
Okay, no, I got you. It's really, I like it. Now, now a lot of black folks use the one that's in the stick. It's almost like a little push-up. It's like a yellow stick. You push it out and put it on scars and on stretch marks and stuff. Let me see. Did you get syllable spankings when you were a kid?
I got spanking.
Syllable spankings is when your parents talk to you. It's like, didn't I tell you to bring your butt off that court into this house?
Yeah, no, I definitely received spankings with my dad's paddle.
But he didn't talk to you during it?
He did not. No, it was more quiet than that. I've never heard of that. That's actually really good.
Oh man, that's a staple of black. Didn't I tell you to take the shot? Didn't I tell you? That's oh man. Hey, what's the longest you've ever waited in a barber shop to get faded up?
Oh, not long.
They probably just clear out when you come in, huh?
Well, I would say not more than 15 minutes. I would say I'm not gonna wait. This is probably, for me, it's nice. I get like maybe 4 or 5 haircuts a year. That's one of my privileges of being a white man is that I can get a short haircut and just let it grow long for a nice little while, and I can style it, and it's still.
So listen, inquiring minds want to know: have you ever gone to a black barber shop or got a haircut from a black barber?
So our teams, there's always like a team barber, and every year, whatever team I'm on, the guy's like, I got some scissors, I got some product, I can hook you up. And I'm like, I don't know, brother. I mean, I love you, but I don't know if I trust you with my hair. But I did do it one time. I was in Cleveland, and the guy, he keeps on asking me. I'm like, all right, brother, you got me one time. And I came out, 45 minutes later, I'm lined up, I'm faded up. And I'm like, man, I mean, this might look good to some people, but this is not my way, brother. So that was the one time.
Man, and I know it's funny. You said you get 4 haircuts a year. you got to see your teammates getting a haircut before every game or at least once a week. Because I see those lines from the players. I see the
They
fade up.
all
So
lined up.
you
Crazy.
got to look
Especially
at that.
when you're on the Bucks and you're playing on TNT every other game, ESPN, everybody's got to get lined up. And I get it. I totally understand it. I don't
Oh,
judge.
man. No. That is good. You know what? I think, one last one. Did you grow up with family members who put plastic on their furniture?
No.
Did you have friends who have you ever seen that or gone to someone's house and seen it?
I feel like I have seen it, but I have not seen that in person in a long time.
Oh, okay, I got you. So no, man, I appreciate that. That's fun. So we laugh over these things and we find out that regardless of where we grew up, so many of us have some of these similar experiences, and someone will inevitably say, "Oh, my Aunt Margaret had that plastic on her furniture, and it was in the front room, and nobody could even go in there anyway." So, man,
that's hilarious.
So, listen, man, I'm really glad that you're here. It's interesting. We're going to talk a little bit about the article you wrote called Privilege. But I just want to mention that when I wrote it, I sent it out to a team of folks who, besides being a pastor and a podcast host, I also run a nonprofit called Nehemiah. And we do a lot of race relations training and empowerment and bridge building. And so we've taken 1,000 white folks through a U.S. Black History course. It's a 9-week course. Wow. And when your article came out, this is before you even came to Milwaukee, man, we sent it out to the whole list. So over 1,000 people got that email with the article in it. And so when we found out that you were coming to Milwaukee, my team said, let's get in touch with this guy. And of course, we didn't know, the exact routes for doing it. But man, back in January, I was invited to a gathering through who I now know is a mutual friend, Dave Gibbons, invited me to come and present a little bit on my work. And doing a presentation, a slide went up about my podcast, and then I went and sat back down. Afterwards, at a break, a woman came up to me and she said, "Hey, I'm from Milwaukee too." And we were in Los Angeles. I was thinking, somebody else is here from Milwaukee, from Wisconsin? And she started talking about how she enjoyed my presentation. And I looked at her name tag and it said Juliet Korver. And I said, this is going to sound weird, but I've been trying to get in touch with your husband about being on my podcast to talk about that article he wrote. She said, "Oh, while you were presenting, I took a picture of the screen. I already sent it to him. Oh yeah, he'll come on your show." So this is crazy. I have my marketing people on it. I go to California. I bump into Juliet. While I'm talking, she sends a screenshot of my presentation to you. So you already knew about Black Like Me when I first reached out to you, man. So this was meant to be, Kyle. This was meant to be.
Hey, it was. And I love that we are connected by Dave Gibbons first.
Oh, yeah,
Dave Gibbons, for people who don't know him, he's been an incredible voice in my life for a bunch of years, been a mentor figure, and just has built out this incredible network of people who are trying to be about the right stuff in the world and creating new things and new vision. And so that if to be connected through him, that was the first thumbs up, towards you and connecting. But like Juliet, I came out of practice and I had this screenshot, and it was all about you, and it's underneath it. She was like, "His name is Alex G. This is your new friend. You need to know him. You need to learn from him. You need to know this man."
See, I knew I liked Julia. I knew I did. Man, and what's so crazy is that we were planning on connecting up. We were planning on double dating with Jackie and Juliet before all the COVID-19 stuff happened. And when this stuff lifts, we got to still get together. But man, let me just ask you, how's your family doing in the midst of all the COVID-19? I got questions for you, but just how are you all doing, the Korver family, with all this quarantining stuff?
Overall, we're doing good. I think we talk about a lot, and we talk about it with our kids, that we feel very fortunate that we are not feeling this the way that some people are. We're not sick.
Right.
We have access to food. We have access to supplies. We have access to medical if we need it. Our families so far are all healthy. So I think, for us, we're just stuck in our house, which, is a challenge. I got 3 little kids, they're 7, 5, and 3, but we are feeling super blessed right now. So we have kids that are doing online school, trying to figure that out, trying to figure out how to be a substitute teacher in the mornings, and try, for me to still keep my head and my heart somewhat attached to basketball, just in case this all starts back up.
Sure.
But I think trying to find the silver linings, which are there for all of us, no matter the situation. I think, if you love your family, you're getting a whole lot of family time, which is great.
Right.
And so we're just trying to take advantage of this, take advantage of some more quiet times, maybe, read or journal or whatever it is that you like to do. Like, we're trying to find those spaces as well. So, and then obviously support, our community and people help in whatever way that looks like. So,
oh, man, good. I'm glad that you all are well. Hey, you've been in Milwaukee for what, about a year?
Not even. We've been here
Not
since
about 10.
September.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's right. Have you got to try some fried cheese curds?
No.
You haven't? Okay,
Yeah.
we get
You only
together.
knew
We get
Juliet for
together.
a little bit. You only met Juliet for a little bit.
You can't have
But
dairy. She won't let you. It's fried and it's cheese.
we are
Okay,
the
I'll sneak
healthiest
you
eaters
out.
around here.
Come
If
on,
you
man. I'll
got
sneak you
gluten,
out.
it's got, if it's not organic and it's not, it is not touching this house. I
It's
will
not
tell you
touching us.
that
I
right
got you. I can respect that, man. So,
Yeah.
Kyle, you're in Milwaukee now. Your upbringing is really interesting to me because as you and I talked in prepping for the show, you mentioned how you lived in communities that were predominantly Latino, and then and teams are predominantly Black. So just kind of walk me through where you live. You're from Southern California. Just walk me through just places you lived and whether you were part of the majority culture, minority culture. I just thought that was very interesting.
Yeah, I think most people only move. I mean, a lot of people don't move in life.
Right.
Some people move maybe once or twice, but I've moved a lot in life, and it's a bit of an interesting story. And it really fits into what we're talking about. I was born in Paramount, California. So it's outside of LA. It's between Long Beach and Compton. I was born there. I lived there until I was 12. My grandfather, my father, my uncles were pastors of a church that was across the street, Emmanuel Reformed Church, and so we were super involved in the community there. It was a predominantly Latino community. So I grew up in the minority in a lot of ways. I don't think I had all the eyes for that, back then, because when you're younger, you don't see things, quite the same. But I grew up with, when I was 9, 10, 11 years old, the Rodney King, the LA riots, OJ Simpson, some fairly significant moments in this story for our country. So I was there, moved from Paramount, California to Pella, Iowa, which is a small town of 10,000 white people. So it went from, one of the few white people to, being in the majority. And so then went from there, went to Omaha, played at Creighton, had some more diversity again. Went from there, I was drafted by Philly, and I was the only white guy on the team my rookie year. And I was on
the only white guy
team. I was the only white guy. I was on a veteran team. Bunch of really strong personalities, alpha male personalities. I could probably count the words that I said that whole year. But went from there to Utah and played for the Jazz, which, of all the NBA cities, that's about as white as you're going to get. So went from the only white guy to Utah, then to Chicago, to Atlanta, super diverse cities. Went to Cleveland, and then Utah again. So anyway, it's interesting for me as I look at all of this, as I look at my own story and, what do I have to add or to help in these conversations. A lot of it is just understanding where I come from and maybe moments that I didn't uncover at the time or didn't have eyes for at the time, kind of going back and seeing how things maybe have shaped my mind or shaped my heart. And then maybe being able to to help other people out with some of the things that I've learned about myself, just because I've been in so many different stories with this, right, and so many different environments. And so that's kind of been my journey with this.
Man, I appreciate that. I gotta tell you, Kyle, what made me really connect with your story and want to share it so broadly is that you didn't come out as this brazen expert who said, I've had some Black teammates, I've been faded up by a Black barber. Let me school the world on how race relations worked. That you wrote something that I thought was that it was real provocative, man. It was honest, it was hard hitting, but at the same time, you made it very clear, I'm not trying to be anybody's white savior. I'm trying to feel my way through this. I'm trying to, to talk as I go. So our conversation is going to be based upon the journey. We're not trying to prop you up to be this expert or the spokesperson for this. Because I imagine a lot of media outlets came at you after you wrote that article wanting you to talk about it, and you avoided most of them. So, man, I really appreciate that you and I are sitting down and talking about it. But again, I want to make it really clear. I'm interested in talking with you about your journey, because the thousands of listeners who tune into Black Like Me are not experts either. But they often hear me talk to Black people about what happens to us. They don't hear a lot of white friends or colleagues or allies sitting in your seat talking with me about race relations. So people are leaning in, not just because you're Kyle Korver, not just because you're with the Bucks, but because, okay, here's a white guy who has privilege and access, and he's still admitting, and Black friends, he's still admitting I got a ways to go. So we're helping people by just being honest about what a long journey this is. And so, man, I appreciate it. I want to read something. At the top of your article, it says, when the police, and it's entitled Privilege, and we'll have a link of that in this podcast, folks. When the police break your teammate's leg, you think it would wake you up a little bit. When they arrest him on a New York street, throw him in jail for the night, and leave him with a season-ending injury, you think it would sink in. You think you'd know that there was more to the story. You think, but nope. I mean, that part, that drew me in, because you set it up and it said to me, I'm about to talk to you about an epiphany, that you would think that this would open your eyes, but no, it didn't initially. You and his brother Tabo you're friends. You said he spoke several different languages. His parents were from Africa and Switzerland. And so you're talking about, you have this relationship, you have this rapport, yet it's almost like he has this secret life. And the secret life is not going to a club at night in New York. The secret life is you're Black and you have a whole different interaction. That's what I mean by secret. It's a different life than what you're experiencing. And even with that season-ending injury and ending up in jail overnight, that still was not enough to open up the eyes of someone, and you knew him. So I love the way you open that story. Just talk to me about that a little bit, man. That's a great opening. So it seems like that started a new journey for you. Can you just talk to me about what you were thinking when you opened up like that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think first maybe go back to what you're saying before. This is an intimidating space for white people to speak into, right? This is a tricky one. It was one thing for me to sit there and write, because I could write and then erase and then write and then kind of piece my thoughts together. It's a whole other thing to just to just talk and know that it's being recorded, and people are going to hear what you have to say, and it was just off the top of your head. This is a tough space, an intimidating space, I would say, to be in, especially for me as a white man. Right. I think as I have tried to stumble my way through, what does helping look like? What does my voice sound like? I've had to understand that all I can share is my own story. Right. So I can't sit here and teach a class. I can't sit here and educate people. I can't. It makes my bones quiver to think about telling you, Alex G., what I think about racism. Right. It makes me so uncomfortable, but I can tell my stories.
Definitely.
And I think humbling yourself to show, man, I've had all these blind spots in life. And I've had a bunch of experiences. My story of, kind of what I shared of, bouncing around different cities and different environments. I have some stories, and most of them aren't very fun to tell because they're embarrassing, right?
Sure.
But this is part of me, saying, hey, I am understanding more and more as I continue to educate myself. I'm seeing more and more things, and I'm going back through my personal story and evaluating, how I looked at Tabo, how there's a whole bunch of stories that I have, right? How did I react in the moment, and what do I see now? And that kind of, you said epiphany, yeah, but also it's like this journey, right? Of understanding a little more and a little more. I think these are the stories that we can tell as white people. And so as I was kind of going through my story, this seemed like a really, it's a hard one for me to tell, because I mean, Tabo was on my team in Utah again when I was going through this, when I actually published this piece. Like Tabo was, he was my teammate in Atlanta, but he was also my teammate for the Jazz.
That's ironic.
Right, it was. And so, I mean, to admit to him that, man, when this happened to you the first time, I didn't have eyes for it. Right? Like, I'm really sorry. Like, that was, it was, I feel like this is all that I have to say. But I feel like it's important to say. And I feel like this is, you know, for me as a white man, like, this is my work. And so that's what I tried to start with and lead with, and then kind of let, you know, my other thoughts come as they did.
I've been in this work for like my whole adult life, my whole career, so 30 years or so. But, you know, I'm 56, so I've been dealing with race relations my entire life. One of the things that's been helpful to me and helpful to my work is not having a white brother colleague that has all the answers, but someone just saying, you know what, I just saw that. Like, you met my podcast manager, Tyler.
Yeah.
I'm old enough to be Tyler's dad, but there are times we've walked into a place and someone has said to him, oh, and they've extended a hand, you must be Dr. Alex G. Again, he's half my age. The assumption is he's got those credentials, the title. He says, no, actually my boss is. But we'll sometimes process that on the way back home or riding back. And he'll say something that will let me know I saw that. He doesn't have to put that out every time. He doesn't have to fix it every time by just correcting that person subtly. But the fact is, he saw it and let me know he saw it, because there are times that as a Black person, you just think you're crazy. And so it's one thing to have those experiences like Tabo had, but it's another thing to have your white friends who have your back. I mean, like, you all are teammates. You go up against enemies all the time together. But it's interesting, our oblivion to each other can wedge something between Black and white team member that people didn't even know was there. So the fact that you came back and said, man, I'm seeing it, it's probably more than you realize, because you don't know what you don't know. You can't jump on that bandwagon and say, this is crazy, you shouldn't have arrested him, if that's not where you are. But the fact that you're able to come back, man, and say, I see things differently. I'm just saying, from a Black man, when my white friends have done that, and that's sort of their entry point into it, that's a great gateway into the discussion. So don't belittle that, because that's been helpful to me. Just saying, hey, G, I saw that, I heard that, and this is what I did about it, or what I didn't do about it. Not that they've got to fix it, but seeing it a lot is where it starts, man.
I think what I've found, because I felt like after the article came out, it felt like there was like a lot of pressure. Like, I was getting a lot of feedbacks, people saying like, what are you going to do now? Like, let's see how good of an ally you really are. Right. Yeah. And I'm like, whoa, like, I'm not sure what to do with that. Like, but like, to me, some of the best advice I've gotten is like, when you don't know something about this, like, just say you don't know.
Right.
But that you're willing just to be here. Like, I want to stay in this conversation. I want to learn, but I don't know. And I've actually found that Black people, like, you guys don't really expect me to understand that much.
No, we really don't.
Right?
We really
like,
don't.
It is okay. Like, if we get stuff wrong, it's not even a big deal. Right? Like, you just
assumed
want
it.
us to be in there with you, right?
Yes.
And like, to say like, hey, anyway, that understanding, that epiphany, it just like lightened my whole load.
That's what I'm
right?
saying.
I had this burden all of a sudden. It's just like, oh man, like, I gotta have all these answers, and I gotta live this perfect life, and I'm so torn on saying this word or that word, or like how do you, like, you get caught, like, right, in all these little traps, and just to have that burden like cut, just like, no man, like, you just say you don't know, and it's all good.
Right.
And that just took so much pressure off of me. Like, just like, hey, all I gotta do, like, I have my stories, I share my stories, and then, like, I'm just here, and I want to be a better ally. I want to learn, like, I want to be in relationship with you, and like, if that's your head and that's your heart, like, man, like, that's really good. So that's kind of like my encouragement to white people who have come and talked to me about this. that's kind of where I tend to go.
Yeah.
It's like, it's important to keep educating yourself and to keep learning and to keep examining your story, but don't feel like you got to have this thing figured out or that you got to fix anything, because that is something that first you can't do, right?
Mm-hmm.
And secondly, you don't have to put that on yourself. And I don't know, that was super helpful for me. So
Man, that's that.
thank you. And this has also been a message from you to me, like as we've been kind of talking about doing this
Right,
thing.
right.
Like,
One of the things that I try to do in my line of work, and really, I'm a bridge builder. So that's
yeah,
between generations, it's between nationalities, it's between ethnic groups, between denominations, religious faiths. So that's how I try to think about things. Like, how do we come together? How do we work? How do we work together? And one of the things that I really appreciate about professional athletes is when I watch you and your teammates and others, you've got each other's back. And when someone's out of position, you can, I wish that you all were mic'd so that we could hear you. But, it's like you're saying, come on, man, cover your man or get in place or come on, get your head in the
right.
game, because it leaves you vulnerable if your teammate's not doing what they're supposed to be doing. I could imagine that you had a hard time realizing I'm Tabo's friend and roommate. I mean, a friend and teammate. And I wasn't playing my man. Like, I wasn't in position. Like in every other arena, I've got him and he's got me. This man's leg is broken. This season is messed up for him. And many of the people who don't look like him don't even understand it. That's not just his reality. That's the reality for every Black person that's on that team. And you alluded to this in the article too, and in America. And so, again, your job, we can't belittle the importance of self-education, of
Right.
coming to a place of epiphany. That to your point, Black people don't need white people to fix the whole world.
Right.
What we really need to just begin to figure out is, how do I wake up to realize I'm not playing my man? I'm leaving my buddy, my brother, my teammate
Right.
exposed and vulnerable. And we're in the same proximity and don't even know that this is a reality. And that's the ugliness of racism, that people like you and others don't even realize that that's a pressure and it's a fear. Tabo experienced it, but that's my fear. And many of my white allies, friends, don't even realize that I live with that fear and that concern every day. And I think
Yeah.
just people knowing it causes them to say, to check in, or to maybe just tell their story of something when they realize something that's not right, that's taken place. But again, I don't want to belittle the importance of just educating yourselves and reading
Oh, for
and
sure.
learning for people just to understand this. And you didn't just, what I love about the article is that you didn't say, I had this experience in Atlanta and then I just woke up. I mean, you were in Utah years later. Tabo's on your
Right.
team again, and something's going on with Westbrook, and then you're like, wait a minute, here we go again. The team is having a discussion about it, and then Tabo's in the locker room, and you're thinking like, shit, here this is again. And
Right.
what am I going to do now? Because now my eyes are awakened. But that
Right.
didn't happen overnight. That was a journey, right?
Oh, it was a journey. I think, I mean, this is a process to
Yeah.
go through, and there's so many different layers and so many different levels of understanding. I think, when I was in Atlanta with Tabo, there was a bunch of stories kind of going on in an organization. We had a couple of kind of hard stories played out, Tabo being one of
Mm-hmm.
them. There's some hard stories going on in Atlanta at the time. And then Trayvon Martin, was killed, and Black Lives Matter was kind of forming, and there was a ton of attention around them and a lot of energy. And yeah, I think I realized in that moment, like as I'm taking all this in, I'm like, I always assumed that I knew more than I did,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because I'm like, I have half of my friends are Black, like play, I've been in the NBA all these years, like all these things, right? Like I felt like I
Right.
knew more than I did. And I realized as I'm watching all this play out, I'm like, you know what? I don't know. I don't understand this movement. I don't understand all this anger. And I think it's my
Yeah.
job, if I want to be a good citizen, like I need to learn this. And so
Right.
I started the process of seeking out people who I felt like I could have real conversations, people who I already had relationships with.
That's the key. Already had relationships with.
Already had hundreds and hundreds of conversations, not about race, right? People who I knew,
right?
People who were safe for me to be vulnerable and to ask, questions that I was uncomfortable asking, because you don't want to give off, like for white people, we don't want to give off that we don't really understand things. That's this whole thing, right? And so, I'm talking to my friend Rob one day, and I'm like, Rob, I need to ask you some questions because I don't understand Black Lives Matter, and I feel like you can help me. And he's like, absolutely, let's talk. And so I'm like, okay, I don't even know where to start. I don't I don't understand what's happening all the way. Like, it feels like the walls that were between us, like as there's more energy and Black Lives Matter and Blue Lives Matter, and what about these people, like it feels like walls just keep on building up, and there's more and more anger, and like it doesn't feel like it's helping. Like I'm trying, as a white man, I'm trying to analyze how I can be helpful and what's right and what's wrong, and like I just don't get this, man. He's like, yeah, I can understand that, but do you understand like the real message that they're trying to say? And I was like, no, I don't think so. And he said, Kyle, when you look at me, what do you see? And I said, I see Rob. I see a great man, a great husband, a great dad, a friend. He's like, cool, what else do you see? And I was like, I'm not sure. Where are you going with this? I was like, do you see that I'm Black? I'm like, oh, yeah, but that doesn't matter to me. Like I'm colorblind, bro. Like I grew up in Paramount, California, man. Like I don't see this, right? Like I'm not one of those people. And he's like, okay, this is where we start. It's like, Kyle, I am so grateful that you think that we are the same, that we are equal. That is, thank you. But I need you to understand that being Black is a huge part of my life. You may not notice that your skin is white that often. I notice my skin is Black every single day. And how I see the world, and how I see the police, and how I think about the future, and how I think about my children's future, the fact that we're Black matters a lot, because it shapes a lot of what we think is possible and what we have to prepare for. And so you choosing to say that I'm colorblind, you are choosing not to see a huge part of me. You are telling me right now that you are befriending the parts of me that you want to befriend. This is a huge part of me, and I need you to see this. And he says this all to me, and I'm just like the blind spots, right, that I had, like came crashing to the ground, right? They come crashing because this is my, I look up to this guy, right? Like he is a great man, because I had a relationship with him and I saw his brokenness, and he was able to be that honest with me. Like for some reason, like why it took 30 something years for me to initiate this conversation, for this to happen to me, I have no idea, but it happened. And my lenses for all of this was shattered.
Right. When he made that comment to you,
he said, Black Lives Matter is not about like this group mattering, that group mattering. Black Lives Matter, man. It's like, do we matter to you? Right. Kyle, do I matter to you? That was a whole different way for me to see that. And from that point, from my lenses in that moment being shattered, I had to like put back together like my new glasses, my new lenses, right? Like, and that's a process in itself. But that was a super significant moment for me, and one that just just changed my whole path in all this, right?
But it put you on a new trajectory, man, because what happened 100%. Is you had a person who was Black, and you all could talk about life, profession, business, family, children, etc. Well, when you have that rapport, you can talk about race. When you don't have those relationships, a mistake that I see many of my white colleagues who want to be allies is they'll come to our history class, they'll have an epiphany, and then they'll want to go practice it on a Black person, rather than really processing it to not only understand that as a historical fact, how it shaped America, but also how it shaped their reality. And so the fact you had that rapport, you could ask him that very honest question. But the fact that you didn't know, is not because you said, I don't want to know. It's not because you covered your ears and said, la, 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 I don't want to know that ugly history. Schools aren't teaching it so that we can be at odds. There are not enough places to find out how we've arrived at this point, at this juncture. And so when we offer a history class, like I mentioned earlier, it's like 2 months. White people literally cry because they'll say, I'm educated. Why didn't I know this? Who messed with history in our books so that we would think that certain people were just lazy and shiftless and just didn't want to do better? Like when white people sit in this class and they're learning this from history professors, white men who are teaching history in this group. There's one African-American woman, but they'll say things like, Black people didn't have the right to vote or own property or at some point not even marry. But folks were coming in from Europe to get work making boots, overalls, rakes, shovels, hoes, so that slaves could create more free labor and create more product. And so when people say, well, my grandmother came over here and she didn't speak the language, my grandpa came over, but they don't realize that a lot of those folks came over because there were jobs in order to help the slave industry, that slaves were picking cotton. And so we needed to create more railroads and locomotives and steam engines, and we needed to insure boats and insure trains. That, yeah, this whole economy boomed because we had people working for free to make sure that we had sugar to make molasses in order to make rum, or in order to send it all over the world. And so we fast forward to today, and we just assume that certain people don't want to work and certain people have just always had wealth, and we don't even know the backstory of how that works. It kind of makes me think about a point in your one of the podcasts that I checked out with JJ Redick, and you're talking about the intricacies and the details of shooting. That, you know, we just watch you guys shoot. We don't think that all that stuff's involved, but you talk about the mechanics and the angles and all of this. You know, it sounds like a history, or I mean, like a geometry or trigonometry lesson. But as you guys broke it down, we're like, all of that goes into the shot. A lot of people don't know all of what's gone into where race relations are now. So I want to say to folks who are trying to think about this is, don't worry about what you don't know. You've got the rest of your life to begin knowing, but you don't. The fact that you don't know is not because you're a bad person. It's because once we know, we start talking about it. We want to raise our kids together. We want to go to church together. We want to go to dinner together. We want to fix this. But as long as we don't know, we're told that person's trying to take your job. That person's trying to take your family. That person their child wants to date your child. And it just makes us, fearful of each other. So again, the fact that you didn't know, but you had a friend that you could talk to, just broke these blinders off of your eyes. And that's a key point. Folks need to have trusted relationships so people can help them see what they don't see. So, because what he did for you, man, is broke down the mechanics of racism so that you could say, oh, I get it. Like, we don't look at shooting, the same after listening to you talk about all those mechanics because you broke it down. But as we build better relationships with each other, we can begin to break these walls down. It's doable. It takes time. But that example of you having that friend in your willingness to be teachable enough to hear his heart and what he was saying, and you didn't just go, oh, okay, come on, Rob. You going to go all black on me? You're going to play the black card? Come on, man. We are both in Rotary. We both do this. We both do that. Our kids are in swim lessons together. The fact that you didn't do that and you listened, that's really, really where it begins. If I could get more of my white friends who want to be allies to just listen and just say, damn, let me think about that, it begins to change the world. I wish I had more of that. And I'm seeing lots of it, but I wish I'd see more of that. I feel people working to assuage their guilt. That no, man, let me tell you why I don't see color. What they're really saying, this is what I think is going on. I'm on my soapbox. I'm going to shut up in a minute, Kyle. But part of what's happened is white people have not been taught to look at whiteness because it's just called being an American. It's just called being normal. It's like asking a fish to define water, ask me to try to see air and oxygen. It's just there. I'm inhaling it and exhaling it. But the reason why it was so easy for you to not focus in on its skin color, which is obvious, it can't be ignored, is because most white people don't get up thinking I'm white. In fact, I'm curious if you were more aware of not being black, of being white when you played on Philly and you're the only white guy. I'm wondering were you more aware? Well, you also grew up in Paramount, so you were used to sort of being outnumbered. But most people don't get those kinds of experiences.
Right.
But I think for most folks who don't think about their own whiteness or their own ethnicity, it's hard to think that other people think about it all the time because they have to.
Hey everybody, this is Tyler, the podcast manager of Black Like Me. Just wanted to jump on and share 2 quick things about Black Like Me. Number 1, Patreon. Patreon is an opportunity for you if you like our show at all, if you enjoy it, if you want us to keep creating this content, to be able to support us financially and to help us do that. If you're as little as $2 a month, you can join our team. We also have some other higher tiers with some more benefits if you join. So please go to patreon.com/blacklikeme to hear more. Number 2 is that if you are interested in having Dr. G speak, if you're interested in him doing some consulting for you, your organization, anything like that, you can go to alexg.com/contact and you can fill out a form to be able to see how you might be able to bring Dr. G to your business or your community. All right, back to the show.
We're both here in Wisconsin, and what we're seeing in Milwaukee, man, is that this COVID-19, it's killing more Black people in Wisconsin than anybody. That again, Black folks are leading in this because of a lot of things, pre-existing conditions. But man, I'm working with the School of Medicine and Public Health here in Madison. And it has now been determined in my city, in the capital of our state, it's now determined that stress and microaggressions around race, the things that Tabo and others had to think about whenever they're outside and they see police officers, or think about, can their children go out and play, or is my wife safe, or is my mom safe? Can I get a fair deal on a house? Can I find a nursing home for my mom with dementia where they're going to respect her because they've interacted with people who look like her? Those pressures that swirl around our heads, it's now been proven that stress causes us to be more predisposed to things like diabetes and hypertension, which are precursors to cancer, stroke, heart attack, dementia, and now COVID-19, because of just the stress of being Black and living in places like Wisconsin. So I'm like with Rob, when my friends when they say we don't really see race, I'm thinking, well, hell, COVID-19 does, and diabetes does, and hypertension does. That it's feeding off of the stress of people not seeing it, and all of this is going on, and it just makes it so disheartening to carry this in an invisible manner when our white colleagues have been trained. Don't see it, don't see it, don't say it, don't see it. Race is bad. Race is really bad. And so we're trained to not work together. So when you see it and we talk about this is actually how we build bridges.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, here in Wisconsin, we're struggling. Milwaukee and Chicago are being hit really hard. And there's a number of reasons. Again, it's not because you have melanin in your skin, but the life of a Black person, the stress of just trying to navigate is difficult, man. I'm working on a video right now that I'm about to put out for some of our supporters, because when we talk about health disparities for Black people, the response is typically, yeah, we have a lot of Black people who are uninsured or underinsured, or they don't go to the doctors, or they're afraid to go to the doctors. I'm in a process. I just changed my physician, 56, Black. And I've been told since I was 40, get a prostate exam. This is a part of what you do as a Black male, because because you just need to know. You need to get a colonoscopy at 50, then you need to start getting regular prostate exams. Went in to see my doctor, and he said, I don't recommend you do that. And I said, no, I just went to 100 Black man event. There was a Black urologist. He told me to do the blood test and do the prostate exam. No. So we started going back and forth. And he said, well, most men will die with prostate cancer, not from it, but with it. It will be present. And if you find out you have it, you're going to want to do a surgery. I'm like, yeah, just like anyone who finds out they have cancer, they want to deal with it. He said, yeah, but it might not be the right surgery, and it might be drastic. So we'd rather you not know. Kyle, I'm a preacher. I'm not lying, man. Listen, I'm swearing on my laptop right here, man. I'm swearing on my iPhone.
That's crazy.
So he says this to me, and I said, you do see that I'm a Black male. You do know that I'm 55, that I've got hypertension. I need to do this. He starts explaining this to me. So he says to me, so do you still want the exam? Like, hell to the yeah. Again. You know, I'm not excited about what you're about to do, but I got a child, I got a wife, I got a ministry, I've got things to do. But this is what happened, Kyle. I got insurance. I'm Black. I'm middle class. I've got an advanced degree. I got an earned doctorate. I got in my car and I thought, I can't even trust my doctor now. This isn't somebody not putting change in my hand when I go to the restaurant. This is not about having them say, you must, to my assistant, you must be Dr. G. I'm now driving home thinking his job is to keep my Black butt alive. And he is arguing with me. So my blood pressure is going up because I'm thinking, wait, am I like, I feel like I'm in a restaurant and I'm asking for, steak sauce and I'm at some fancy place. He said all of this stuff and they looked at me like I was ignorant. So you still want the exam? And I just said, this is the last time he'll ever see me. So it took me months to find another doctor. That's stressful.
I'm sorry, bro.
And then while this is, but this is for my primary health because I know I'm at risk. And that kind of stress puts me at risk for COVID-19 also. Yeah. And not only does it put me at risk, then in some places they'll say, if you're in your mid-50s or you already got pre-existing issues, you might not qualify for the ventilator. So, I mean, shit is getting real now. So again, this is not me not being allowed to play golf. This is not about someone thinking that I'm the assistant and Tyler's the doctor. This is now life and death. That causes more stress. So I feel my blood, let me breathe, let me pray, help me, Jesus. I feel my blood pressure going up is talking about it because even when we do address it, bro, they make it sound like it's the brother that don't have any education and he's slinging rock inside Milwaukee and he's scared to go to the doctor and poor Black people use the ER as their clinic rather than getting regular checkups. I get regular checkups and that man messed me up so bad because I said, this is how brothers die. Because they go and say, fine, I didn't want to do that exam anyhow. This is how people die. And it's not just uninsured Black people. We carry that stress. And then our counselors are telling our kids, should you really be going to college? Why don't you go to community college? And then I've got to get my mom in a nursing facility because she's got dementia, but I'm looking to see if there's any Black artwork, if there are any Black workers, because I know that a Black worker is going to call my mom Miss Verline, and I can't have somebody 19 years old calling my mom Verline like they girlfriends. And so it's not just me. I got to watch my doctor. I got to watch my daughter. I got to watch my mother. I got to watch my wife. And that's all a part of being Black. And then I still have got to preach and teach and organize and fundraise and be the first one there and the last one there and stronger than my white counterparts just to show I'm just as good. And you begin to wonder, or I begin to understand why life expectancy for Black men is less. And so it's when brothers like you didn't change the world, you didn't create new laws, you took pen and paper after listening to podcasts and reading books and having conversations, and you gave white folks who own NBA teams, play for NBA teams, sell concessions for NBA teams, sell advertisement, you give them a little peek into reality that gives a brother like me a chance to say, maybe if somebody believes what Kyle said about what happened with Russ or Tabo, maybe somebody will believe what I said about my doctor or what my daughter said about her counselor or what my grandma said or my mom said about the nursing facility. My mom's in a great nursing facility, real diverse staff, white, Asian, Latino, Black. I mean, they got it going on and they take care of her. But that's a lot to juggle while still looking buttoned up, buff, right, good shooting, and it doesn't matter. Buff. It's just, yeah. Woo, so help me out. Wait, hold on. I went off on the rails. I got to come back off of that one. But that's real. But again, when our other brothers and sisters begin to say this, it helps us. Like one of my favorite photos from the civil rights movement is this gentleman. I believe he was a Japanese American gentleman, and he had this cool black tam on, and he had a cigarette kind of hanging out his mouth. And he was standing like this, and he was holding a sign that said "Yellow Peril," which is how Asian Americans refer to stand with Black power. We forget how much happens when we work together. in North Carolina and other places in the country, Kyle, where lunch counters were segregated, there were white women who were college students who just sat with black women and black men who were having hot coffee thrown on them. They didn't change the laws. They didn't go ask their dads to protest. They just went and sat at the lunch counter. They got coffee thrown on them too, but the news cameras caught it because they couldn't believe that white women were having coffee thrown on them. After the white women kept sitting there, the white men from colleges started coming and sitting with the white women and the black students. Within 9 months, counter laws about segregating counters, or laws that led to the desegregation of lunch counters, changed in 54 cities in like 9 months because white people just sat down. They put themselves in harm's way. They got the same kind of treatment, but they didn't change the world, but they did. But they started someplace and they did what they could do. We don't even learn that in history. White people think that all they've done is cause the need for civil rights, but people don't even know that white women and white men sat with black women and black men, and the picture of them being scalded with coffee, along with black folks, horrified America. And they said, oh no, change those rules. Black people didn't change those rules. We've been trying to do it. White people changed it because white people did something so that white people could look at it. Black people already knew if we sit there, we're going to get scalded, but people didn't know that white people would. And so your piece is opening up the eyes and just telling your story. You're not giving a history lesson in Black history. You're just saying, here's my perspective as a white male who's privileged. This is what I see. NBA is 75% Black. This is still going on. It's not just Tabo. It's not just Russ. It's other. It's other people, and it's mounting. It's becoming easier to say and easier to do. And somebody needs to be watching this. I just think we can't downplay the importance of that. And I'm not just saying that because you play for the Bucks and you're an athlete. It's like you got to do what you can do, and you did what you can do, man. A question out of that is, when you did start writing, it sounded like you've been thinking about those things for a while. So it wasn't just here's what happened with Tabo and here's how we made up. You started talking about Black Lives Matter. You started talking about police brutality. You started talking about mass incarceration. So when I read, I just thought, well, damn, how long has this letter been in him? But I found out from talking to you, you actually started reading and journaling like for a matter of a couple of years. Like you didn't just sit down in Utah and write that. You've been processing it and educating yourself for a little bit. And the moment presented itself, if I'm understanding it correctly, to sort of speak to it. Is it, some time went in to understanding that in order to write about that.
Yeah. I think when you have this racial awakening, or I don't know what you want to call it all the way.
It's really a justice awakening.
Yeah. There's like this energy that kind of comes over you and you want to do something, right? You want to fix the problem. You want to be a part of and so, that's a process in itself of, how do I find what is actually helpful? What does that look like? What does my voice sound like if I want to say something publicly? And so because you can't just what was the voice that was going to be helpful the most? Like if I'm just super aggressive and saying everything that's wrong, or, if I could be super clever. And anyway, so I started just journaling about it I've kind of had the idea, the seed was kind of planted in me probably in those Atlanta years, and then ended up in Cleveland, and I'm playing with LeBron, and I'm seeing him use his platform
he was using it.
Boy, he's going at the president and everybody. He's obviously super vocal and incredible leader. But I'm watching him use his platform. I'm like, that's I haven't really done anything controversial publicly before, right? I always kind of use use your resources for good, help the kids, obviously as a man of faith, you help how you can. But I just kind of really trying to think through what this would look like if I were to try to step into it, and led to a lot of conversations. It led me down some paths that wasn't this piece, right? I have a horrible story about, how I think I'm going to help fix this problem. You know, we can talk about the white savior kind of complex that you know we can get mad at it, but you know what? Like the more I think about it, it's just kind of like it's like crawling before you walk. You kind of just have to go through this phase as a white person. Like I for a long time, I'm like so embarrassed about it, and I'm mad about things that I was trying to do. But I have so much more grace for it now, just being like, yo, this is just part of the story of, for white people. If you want to actually be helpful, if you're actually convicted and trying to be better, you're going to battle through some of these things, right?
Right.
But, I had this horrible story before the piece. My idea was, so Lecrae, he's a hip hop artist, and I'm sure you've heard of him. He's an amazing person.
Yeah, he's incredible.
Great guy. And anyway, so I come out of this, experience with Rob. He's, shattering my colorblind lenses, and I'm like, all right, I got to start educating myself. I have new lenses. I got to put this thing back together. I'm going to read some books. I'm going to listen to some podcasts. I didn't know about Black Like Me then. I wish I would have, but I did. I'm reading some other stuff. And, so I read a couple, and I call up Lecrae, and so let's get some breakfast. I got this idea. I want to talk to you about it. He's like, all right, cool, man. So I get breakfast, and then we order omelets and side bacon. And I'm like, all right, brother. So I've read these 2 books, right? And he's like, what? Okay, what are the books? And it was like Between the World and Me, and then which it was on New York Times bestseller list at the time. And then Right Color, Wrong Culture, Brian Lawrence, who is an amazing guy, a friend now that I've reached out to and connected with him. Incredible voice in the space.
Yes, he is.
But anyway, so I'm like downloading these books to him, and he's like looking at me like, okay. And he's like, can I get some more bacon, please? But I'm just like in this zone. I'm like downloading, like, what diversity and leadership needs to look like and all these things. And I'm like, all right, bro, this is what we got to do. So we need to do a dodgeball tournament here in Atlanta. We're going to do a dodgeball tournament.
Dodgeball.
I got this family foundation. We'll use this thing. We're going to do a dodge. We're going to get all the Georgia Tech kids and by college, all the fraternities, and we're going to play dodgeball. And you can do a concert, and I can, say a little something. We're going to pass out these 2 books. And he's like, he was so gracious, man. He's such a good guy. He's like, yeah, Kyle. It's like, if you want to play dodgeball, like I'll play some dodgeball with you, but like on Saturday, me and some friends are going to this refugee shelter. There's a bunch of single moms that are in a hard spot. We're going to go there and deliver some food and listen to their stories. If you'd like to come with us, you're more than welcome. And I'm like, oh my gosh, can I take this moment back, please? This is so embarrassing. Like, you're right. This is what I got to do, right? Like I'm not here to fix the thing, right? So anyway, that experience goes into the piece, because I'm like, all right, what does my voice sound like? What does help actually look like? Me doing dodgeball is not the answer, right? Like
it's fun, but it's just not the answer.
But like we're not, anyway, then they're great books, but it's not. Anyway, so keep on going, keep on reading, keep on learning, keep on having conversations, and then eventually we get to the anthem, right? So the anthems, Colin Kaepernick, all this frustrating, because it felt a lot like Black Lives Matter. It's like all of a sudden, like minorities are making a stand. This is like we believe this. We feel like we're not being seen. Like we're demanding change, and there's this outroar about this, right? Like everyone's so upset, but there's obviously athletes, using their voice to support Colin and kneeling. And so I call back home to my dad one day, and I'm like, Dad, what do you think about all this? And he's like, you know what? Like people here in the Midwest, like they're just so sick and tired of athletes, like, getting involved in politics, and like they just want them to stick to sports and just be quiet, right? And I'm like, huh?
Shut up and dribble.
Really? Really? Because like I know those people. right? Like, I know the people that you're talking about. Like, I know them to be good people. I
Right.
know them to be God honoring people. I know them to be generous people. Like, I have good stories with people in this part of the country. Like, how is it that they're missing what's trying to be communicated so badly? And then I was like, well, I mean, how would they know? Like, they don't have anyone. There's just, like, my town is 10,000 white people, right? Like, how do they know? Who's gonna tell them? Who's gonna present something different? And then it was like oh no. Oh no, like, what if I could say something? Like, not that I have to say anything, but what if
Right.
I could? Like, what if there was an opportunity for me to present something that might help shift their thinking? And so I just kept on bringing me back to this, like, could I write something out and post it? I don't know if it would be read or if it would be passed around or how it would be received. I don't know,
Right.
but, like, I guess for me, I had I had so much grace. Like, I have grace for white people who haven't quite gotten there yet, because I was that person for so long, right? Like, I was a person who I thought I got it. I thought I understood some things, but I had severe blinders, right?
Mm-hmm,
Even
mm-hmm.
though I'm in an environment where I'm in the NBA, right? I'm not with all white people all the time. I wasn't getting it, right? So it wasn't that I was, like,
Wow.
mad at all of these white people for not understanding. I'm like, it came from a place of, like, yo, I get how this can happen, but it's like, I feel I'm not guilty, right? But I do feel a sense of responsibility that I can be a part of helping.
Mm-hmm.
What does that look like? What
Right.
does that sound like? Right? And then ultimately, I felt like the only thing I could tell was my own story. Right? I can't sit here
Exactly.
and I can't give lessons. I'm not gonna I'm not gonna convince you with how I'm not this amazing communicator that's just gonna, like, break this down, and in an hour you're gonna understand how this whole thing came together and why we're at why we're at where we're at. Like, I'm not gonna do that, but I
Mm-hmm.
can tell my story. And
Certainly.
so, uh, that was kind of like what I felt I had to say. So, then that came to the Utah, the game against the Thunder with the incident with Russ, and that story plays out, and then we're sitting in this meeting the next day, me and my teammates and president of the Jazz, and trying to figure out, like, what the team's going to do and all these things, and that was the moment when I looked over and I saw Tavo, and I'm like, wow. Like, if I'm gonna do something, because this has been a couple of years now, right, since I had this thought, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like, I needed time to find my voice and to find, put thoughts together and educate
Right.
myself. Like, that
Right.
all had to happen. But I saw Tabo, and I remembered, right, our Atlanta story, and it's just like, I think I have an opportunity here, and I'm pretty nervous about it, but I think it's the right thing to do, and I want to try. And so I called the Players Tribune, and that's where, they helped me kind of take everything that I'd already written, and we worked on it for a couple more weeks, and this is what came out of that. So
I love the fact, man, that one, thank you for sharing that so candidly, but also helping our white allies, folks who are listening, to understand it's a process, it's a journey, and you didn't ask Tavo to fix it for you. You realized what you
right,
needed to do, not to help him. Inadvertently, it would help him, because the more aware white people come, the better things we can have better outcomes. But the fact that you wrote a piece so that white people could also learn, I think, is important. I think another piece that you alluded to, Kyle, is what people need to understand if they really want to be allies. I think people glamorize what it means to be an ally. Like, you guys make basketball look easy. Like, we just think you just show up a couple of days a week, put on cool uniforms, and then you just run out there, play with some of the most incredible athletes in the world, get paid, and then, get to travel the world and think, oh, that's got to be a great life. They don't know about the workouts and the training and all this kind of stuff. I used to be a chaplain for the football team at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. I watched those guys leave my group at 9:15 p.m. and go into another study session. You know, so I know how hard folks work. And I think race relations is like that. People watch people do it. They watch the Brian songs, they remember the Titans, and they're like, I want that. But they don't fully know the cost. You're talking to people you love in Pella, Iowa, who are talking about the people you love in Philly, Atlanta, New York, around the country, in Cleveland, who are kneeling because they're afraid for the lives of their children. And you're standing in the middle because you don't want your friends in the NBA to think that folks in Pella, Iowa are backwards and insensitive and racist. And you don't want your friends and family in Pella, Iowa to think that these are Black people being political and they're getting out of their lanes. They should just shut up and dribble. But they're talking about things that not only matter, that matters to them, but it matters to the Black folks who are watching them play and their cousins and their nieces and their children. You have to stand in the middle knowing that these two ends didn't get each other. And you can't fix that. You can't convert Pella and you can't convert the NBA. You can tell your story, but man, that's got to be some of the pressure you felt too, right? I mean, just understanding, wait, I respect both sides and they see this differently. These folks in Pella think that my friends are hell raisers and they're just trying to live.
Yeah. I was listening to an interview yesterday where they said the hardest place to be is in the middle.
Yeah. Man.
Right. Like the hardest place to be is in the middle, but it's also the most important place to be. We need to find it's
yes.
It's really intimidating work, right? It's hard work. It's long work. And you can speak to this so much better than me. Right. But yeah, like we all have blind spots. We all have our own stories that have shaped the way that we see the world, right? And it's important, I think, you know, the more we stand in the middle, the more we try to see both sides' full stories. I think the more people will stand in the middle, because I think, you know, I was really hopeful that, like, in some way, maybe this piece would call out the good in other people, right? Like, I don't want to convince anyone. This isn't like a convincing conversation, right? It's just like, how do you get other people, how do you get the good in people to come together, right?
Right.
And I don't know if the piece did that all the way. I hope it did. But I think the only way you do that is through telling your own story and your own humbly sharing where you have messed up. You know, no one connects through your victories, right? Like we all celebrate those victories and we admire them, but we're like connected through our harder moments, right? That's where bonding can happen. And so I feel like, you know, at least for me in my story, like I feel like this is kind of the only thing that I had to say. And to be honest, right?
Right. You know, by growing up in Madison, I was typically always one of two Black kids in a classroom. I didn't have my first Black teacher in Madison until fourth grade. And when we moved here from Chicago, I was in second grade, but my first grade teacher was Black. A totally different experience. Black teacher, all Black class, moving to Madison, where I'm one of two Black kids and all the teachers are white and there might be 15 Black kids in the school. But a couple things happened to me. I was pulled over by the police twice, and my brother is a police officer, so I'm not an anti-police guy. I love folks who protect us. But I'm mad at people who don't, you know. I'm mad at pastors who hurt kids. Although I'm a pastor, I know that there's good and bad in every, in every field. But something happened to me when I was pulled over by the police the second time in my church parking lot. And my associate pastor, one of my best friends, was in the parking lot. When I showed up, we have a standing Saturday night prayer meeting. We've been doing it for 25 years. He was in a parking lot. I pulled into the parking lot and two police officers came behind me looking for a red car. Mine was Black. But they started questioning me and shining a flashlight in my car. And he had to get out of his car to walk over to the police officers to make sure nothing strange was about to happen. And I didn't feel threatened for safety at that point, but I was just embarrassed because I'm being treated like I'm a drug dealer, and I'm the longest serving minister in my city. The longest. I don't care if it's a mosque, a temple, cathedral, a hall, I'm it. And so, but while I sat there, this was going on, I felt, Kyle, the American dream unraveling, because I had lived in this world where I thought, you know what, I was a Cub Scout, I was a Weeblo, I delivered newspapers across the street from my church. The bank that was 2 blocks away is where I had my bank account when I was delivering newspapers. Our church account was in that bank. The first time I got pulled over was in that bank parking lot. And I was told I fit the profile of a drug dealer. And, but when I said that to one of my white friends, you know what his response was? Well, Alex, you do drive a nice car.
Ooh.
Like, what else would you expect police to think? So I'm thinking, okay, we're friends. We boat together. We've been in each other's houses. You just looked at me and corroborated with the police by saying, in my 1986 Chevy Nova, which was not a nice car, it was new. I just got out of college with a black suit on, going to take pictures from my church. You're telling me that I deserved it? That somehow by driving, I thought if you had 2 or 3 degrees and you knew how to save money and you had no college debt, you could buy what you wanted to. So now you're telling me, get back in my place. That was more damaging than what the police did, because I expected that person to have my back. Not to say it happens to them, but just to say, Alex, that's what they really said. He said my actions fit the profile of a drug dealer. Before I could even get that out of my mouth, he told me what he thought. And so when I got pulled over the second time, the thoughts are going through my head. I was driving a nicer car at the time. So I started thinking, did I do something wrong? Did I speed? Was I going down the wrong side of the street? What's going on? And I felt that American dream beginning to unravel. And it wasn't because I was just pissed. I was disillusioned. And so when I read about what Tavo experienced, what Russ experienced, the incident itself is bad. But when you feel like you're experiencing it by yourself, and this is the stress of subtle racism, and it's also part of the pain of blatant racism. Did that really happen? Did they say that? Could that be what they mean? And it's that playing those calisthenics in your head that makes you really, really tired. And so I wrote a piece. It's called Justified Anger. I'll send you a link to it so you and Julia can read it. But it's a front page story, man. It got all kinds of crazy shares, like 7,000 shares or something. It was crazy. But people started asking me, what are you going to do now? I wasn't trying to create a movement. I just was trying to be one black man saying, you know what? I've been insensitive. So this is where I can relate to you. This is another reason why I think I like the article so much. When my black friends say, the police mess with us, or they over police our communities. I'm like, well, is your music loud? What's really going on? Because I've been trained falsely, as Lauryn Hill would say, been miseducated, to think that if you just do things a certain way, folks wouldn't see color. They wouldn't treat you differently. When I feel like I've done all the right things and I was treated like a common criminal because of the color of my skin, it disillusioned me. And I felt that if I didn't kneel, if I didn't say Black Lives Matter, if I didn't write the article, I'd be betraying my folks. And so what's happened is the game of racism has risen to the level that Black folks who are also waking up to realize they're being rich and famous and athletic or a tenured pastor doesn't buffer you from it. The need for white allies to write articles, to talk to the police, to say this is true, to just tell their stories, to corroborate the stories of their friends was key. My buddy Kevin didn't come out there and pretend like he was a lawyer. Get your butts back in the car. Leave my buddy and my pastor alone. The fact that he was standing there, I knew that if something did go down, he was going to film it. He was going to call. And, heck, Kevin's from Buffalo. Heck, Kevin might have thrown down. He's a hockey player too. So Kevin probably would have started boxing with me. But just the fact that my white brother got out of the car. Now listen, I love Kevin, but I ain't getting out of a car up on the police in dark, and it's just my mama, my sister, my wife, my daughter. Kevin got out of his car and just stood there. Even though the American dream was unraveling for me, the fact that he was, and this is a white brother, standing there knowing that this was unfair, but did not let me experience it alone, took our friendship to a whole nother level. He didn't change the world. He didn't say NAACP. He stood there. Now, they asked him to corroborate my story. They asked him, could he verify that I was who I said I was? And I didn't violate any laws. But again, Kevin got his master's degree in African-American history. So Kevin can break down the law. Kevin's wife is Black. So Kevin's son is Black. So Kevin can break all this stuff down. But Kevin just stood with me in that day. And so if nothing else, if your letter, your article helps white players, white owners, white coaches, heck, white fans stand with the Tabos and the Rustas and the others in the world who are experiencing these things, it means more than you realize. And we have to help our allies to take that step. And now other steps will happen, but I'm just saying in that moment, while this is unraveling for me, his presence standing there gave me a sense that nothing crazy was going to happen and I would not have to recount this story by myself.
That's really powerful. I think, for me, is I've tried to create the new lenses that I want to see the world, and that I want to see what does being an ally look like all the way. What are my lenses that I use for this? The picture that I've been settling on is a picture of during the anthem. Chris Long played for the Eagles,
right?
And he was there's a picture of him. He did it every game, but he was standing next to one of his teammates who was kneeling, and he didn't kneel, but he stood there right next to him with his hand on his shoulder. And I've kind of broken that down in my head a little bit. And I feel like, like he wasn't, could he have kneeled next to him and say like, yeah, this is my fight too, and I'm right here with you? Like totally, that could have been fine. But I felt like what he was trying to say, and I don't want to speak for him, I've never actually met him before, but how I'm reading this is like, this is not my problem to fix. Certainly, like white men have, we have created racism, we have driven this thing, we've evolved it into what it is, but like we don't just come in and fix this thing, right? Like it's important for us to understand, but like for us just being right there and saying, hey, like, yep, everyone in this whole nation right now is watching the anthem. Every single person, every single camera is on me.
Right.
I'm letting you know that I'm standing right here next to my brother. My hand is on my shoulder. I got his back, and I'm in this thing. And just that posture is really powerful to me. And I don't know, as you were talking about your friend being there for you,
right?
That it just seems to connect with that story, and which is a little affirmation, which makes me feel good.
Sure.
We're still questioning, we're still trying to figure this thing out all the way, right? But
right. But you start
that's
somewhere.
What we're supposed to do.
You start somewhere,
right.
and then Chris grows again. I remember watching that and trying to think about what that means and what that looks like. But that's a start for someone. And then if he has like a Rob, is that your friend's name, Rob?
Rob.
Yeah, Rob. You have some, but eventually you might get a Rob in his life that may say, all right, hey, Chris, this is a good start. But have you considered doing this or reading this or taking a look at this podcast? It's the beginning on a journey. We just need people to begin, but it does not begin with expertise. That's where he was. You wrote an article, but you studied the issues to know that they were real so that you could write them with conviction. And so I want to say to our listeners, like what's in your hand? What can you do? What questions can you ask? Are you on boards that are all white? Are you in a room with all white people who are trying to fix Latino people, Black people, immigrant people? Someone's got to stand up and say, wait, time out. We are not going to do this, because these issues are often perpetuated by white folks, particularly white men. This is wrong. If this team, this room, this board table looks all white and all male, and we're trying to fix something for women, for Black people, what have you, let's stop it because this is futile. This will not work. That's where you can start. You work in HR, you know someone who does, and they have no Black, Latino, Asian American contacts, but we can't hire any diversity. It begins by inroads. But folks that are listening to us having this discussion, Kyle started somewhere. He didn't just say, hey, I'm in the NBA. I'm one of the few white folks. Hey, I was the minority in Philly. I know what it's like to be a minority. First of all, Kyle, can I thank you for not saying that? Because I got to tell you, can I thank you for not saying, well, I was the only white guy, and so I know what it's like to be outnumbered. Because as soon as you got in your car and left the arena, the world was yours again. I hear so many white people say, well, you know what? When I was a kid, I was the only white guy that made the team, and so I know what it's like to be a minority. No, you don't, because you know what? The owners look like you, and the person who owned the facility looked like you, and the one who owned the land looked like you. And so I just so appreciate the fact that you didn't just say, I get what it's like, because wow, when I was in Philly, I was the minority and I felt reverse discrimination. So thank you for not saying that, man.
Yeah,
man, I did, and so so that's crazy. Hey, while we're on Philly for just a second, could you school Iverson from the 3-point line? Could you?
Oh, from the 3-point line for sure. Anywhere else? No. From 3, I had him.
Yeah, from 3, you had him.
Anywhere else?
Oh my goodness, man. Listen, a couple other questions, just general, then because I don't want to take up your whole afternoon. But one, man, it sure looked like, at least here in Madison, as me and my wife and my friends sat in front of the TV and just yelled and screamed that y'all were going to take it all this season. Is that how you all were seeing it? Were you all tasting the ring and the championship? Again, no one knows the future, but were y'all feeling that? Were you feeling it the way we were as fans?
I think we were so excited, and we are. I mean, you never know. We'll see how this plays out in our country in the coming months. Maybe we get to come back and play. We're hoping so.
Sure, we are too.
But I think for sure, we know that we're in the mix, right? Gotcha. I think that's when you're in the NBA, to know that you're one of the few teams that has a legit shot, like that's really exciting. And especially for me, I've never won a championship. This is my 17th season. Lost in the finals a couple times. Mm-hmm. To know that you have a legitimate shot is really exciting. It's really energy giving. So, man, we're so hopeful that this thing comes back and that we get a shot at it, because I really love our team. We got a great group of guys. Everybody gets along. Everybody works hard. Everyone's about the right stuff. It's really a team that you want to cheer for. It's a bunch of really good people, and so.
Man, that's good.
But yeah, man, hopefully it comes back. We'll see.
I hope so. We really hope that you all get to come back and do that. Hey, just probably just 2 more questions. One, are younger players coming to you saying, "Hey, man, I like what you wrote. I want to talk about this or process this." Are you finding that people that white players are gravitating towards you, wanting to learn more and wanting to be put on a journey?
I've had several younger white guys come up to me either before a game or after a game. One time during a game.
During the game.
Yeah, it was during the game. He's like, "Man, hey, if I don't see you later, I just wanted to say that what you wrote really connected for me, and it's really challenged me. So just thank you." And, I don't know where that took them in life. I'm not sure exactly what they connected with or didn't. But that's been cool. I didn't know who was going to connect with this, or who was going to like it, or who was going to read it. But certainly, that some of these young guys did, and that it did something in them. I'm super grateful for that.
That's cool, man. That's really cool. This is probably just more a comment. You don't have to weigh in on it. So not really a question, but I'm just saying, because both of us have talked about faith and we're men of faith. I think that there's more than faith communities. That's the faith community, particularly in where we connect in Christian circles, churches. I think that there's more that we can do in talking about Jesus' examples of love and acceptance and unity. Man, I just feel that if we look at major institutions like that, as those groups begin to awaken, they can help to cause a ripple effect of how people think or rethink how we work together. It could be a very powerful message to communities of faith. I'm hoping that they are taking a look at what you've written and thinking about what it means theologically and biblically to stand among those who seem to be the least among us, or to give voice to the real trauma that people are experiencing. That's a deep prayer. That's a deep longing for me.
Yeah, I hope so. I think there's certainly a great opportunity for the church to be leaders in this, right? Like we are. The book that we read is all about love and grace and confession and forgiveness
and unity
unity, right? Diversity. Like you go through the book of Acts, right? Like this is what we're supposed to be about. And oftentimes, we get so caught up in being missionaries and going across the world. Like we have in our backyard this incredible opportunity, in our backyard, in our front yard, in our living room. Like it's everywhere, right?
It's everywhere, man. It's everywhere.
And one of the books that I read that was it was heart-wrenching for me was the Color of Compromise by Jamar Tisby. And it just goes through the story of the white evangelical church, and its story with racism, and it's so intertwined, either by action or by silence. So much of us, especially kind of like white moderate Christians, who I would probably put myself in that category of majority of my life, have just been silent. We know better. We want to be about the right things. We pray for healing and restoration, but we're not walking into the opportunity that's right in front of us. And lots of it is because it's intimidating, and we don't know how to do it, and we don't know where to start. There's a lot of reasons why maybe people don't step into this, but the reality is, if you go through the church's history, there's been a lot of silence. A lot of silence. And it's the book took me like 8 months to read, because I just couldn't read more than a few pages at a time, certainly not more than a chapter at a time. So it was just it broke my heart, and
man.
And again, I don't want to sit here and be angry. I don't want to be angry at the church. I don't want to be angry at Christians. I don't want to be, but we just have an opportunity to be so much better. And the things that we profess and that we believe in, that's what is needed. And so
that's a powerful statement.
It feels like there are more and more Christian leaders awakening to this and seeing the opportunity and challenging their people, their congregations. But there can be so much more, and we can do so much better. And so I agree with you, man. The church has a hard story in this,
Man, I was Tisby has a podcast, Pass the Mic. I'd love to find a way to collaborate with him. You admire people from afar, but folks that are having that kind of voice to awaken people to love is a form of what it means to be a prophetic leader. And so I'm gonna have to reach out to him. I'm gonna talk to Tyler. We're gonna have to try to reach out to him and just, is there a way we can cross collaborate, collaborate? Because sometimes podcast hosts will do that. And I want to let you know too, the Bible tells us be angry but don't sin. And so our movement, the initiative within my nonprofit is called Justified Anger. Anger arose after the police pulled me over in my own church parking lot. Pulling me over at the parking lot of my bank in broad daylight was one thing, but in my own church parking lot in front of my own door, I know that not a single pastor in my city has ever experienced that. And there probably are not any in the whole state that have experienced what felt like near arrest. But that anger that arose out of it made me begin to talk and create a podcast and preach and build inroads to people. So I just want to encourage people to not be afraid of anger. Scripture even talks about, God being angry with wickedness, but still has extended love to the planet. And so anger doesn't necessarily mean that we're destructive, but it can be a useful emotion if it moves us to say, I'm not going to be quiet anymore. And and to do something that's really constructive. And so we need people responding, whether it's anger, hurt, fear, disappointment. Don't neglect following those emotions if it allows people to really take action, because in times like these, man, it's hurting. Like, we talk about racism as a concept, but racism is now materializing itself through COVID-19 deaths. And so I'm just realizing the costliness of this, man. Last question, bro. What kind of world do you hope for your 3 children in terms of how kids play together and they live in this unified way? What's your dream when you and Juliet close your eyes, when you all say prayers with your babies? What are you hoping the world and their relationships look like, Kyle?
Yeah, I think, I hope a couple things, for them if I think about them in this conversation. I think one, like kind of what we were just talking about with the church, like I believe as Christians, it's our work to love Jesus with all our heart and mind and body and strength. But to know that he put us here on earth to not just do that one day in heaven, but to do that right now.
Right.
To understand that, we have an opportunity, we have a responsibility to be a part of reconciliation and building bridges and helping build healthy diversity. This is, to me, what Christians are supposed to be about.
Yes.
Right. So I hope that they understand that. But also, I think just on a personal level, I think, to me, I want them to understand that diversity makes you better.
I love that.
It makes you better. If you only stick to people who look like you, who think like you, who have the same background and faith as you, if that's all you ever surround yourself with, you've created a ceiling for yourself, right? Like
right.
that's all that you can be. Diversity breeds innovation, right? It breeds growth, and everything. Our world is ever evolving, right? And if you want to be a part of the evolving world, like you got to be around people that don't just think like you and look like you and act like you, right? So to understand that, I think that's just on a selfish level for my kids. Like I want them to be everything that God created them to be. I want them to see all their gifts used to their maximum potential. I want them to be the person that they were created to be. And to do that, like you got to get outside of your comfort zone. You have to understand that this is important work, not just because people are hurting. Certainly, like that is part of our responsibility and opportunity here on earth. But like also, just like this makes you better.
Yes.
It's not just about the work. Like you get gifts in this as well. And so, anyway, I hope they understand these things. We definitely tried, me and Juliet, we tried to talk about this, quite a bit. And it's good for us too, when you have to take these really kind of bigger, sometimes intimidating concepts and you have to explain it to little kids. Right. You have to break it down so simply. It's really good exercises for us too, just as parents. But anyway, that's our hope for our kids. Like, this is good work. It's the right work. And we hope that they understand that.
Man, that's a beautiful dream. And I love that you said it makes us better. It's not just something we tolerate, but it makes us better. Listen, man, you've taken some good time out of your afternoon to talk with me. And this was fantastic. Again, the vulnerability, the candor, the frankness, expressing your hopes, I think is important. And man, part of my leadership development education, my coursework focused on something that's called sovereign foundations. And that means when you talk to people, try to figure out patterns in their lives that might somehow shape where they're going in life, their trajectory in life. The fact that you're living in the LA area doing Rodney King and OJ Simpson, you were in Atlanta and, we had Trayvon Martin's death. You were, playing with LeBron, who was wearing some very provocative T-shirts and making some very bold statements. You had family in Pella, Iowa. I know I'm putting that mileage. You had this relationship with Tabo. You were on on the team when this thing went down with Westbrook. Those things aren't accidental, man. Those are experiences. And so I just want to say to you, as an activist, as a community leader in this, but also I want to say this to you as a pastor. Those things would indicate to me as an outsider that those are nuggets. Like if you use a rock climbing a strategy or analogy, those are things that you hinge on, that you put your foot on, that you pull up on. Those aren't accidental. So don't let people pressure you into what this needs to look like. But this might be a part of your call, brother, too. I think athleticism is being a dad, being a husband. That's all part of it. I don't think that calling is so singular. But because of the places that you had to look at, you got a chance to look at, because of some of the events you saw with a different lens, because it happened in your backyard or not far from you, or it happened where you experienced it with folks where you were not necessarily the majority perspective. Most white men have never had that experience or will never have that experience. You're unique because what percentage of the world's population plays pro basketball in the United States? You have that going for you. Plus, what white man has had these types of experiences? I mean, Trayvon Martin, O.J. Simpson, Rodney King, these are things that will be talked about historically in terms of things that shaped Black Lives Matter. These things, they will be seen as things that really shaped or defined race and race relations in the United States. And you were part of it. You were in the mix. You didn't read about it. This is going on around you. And so the bigger question for us is not just what needs to be done or what people think we need to do. What were we put on this planet to do? And your platform might be exacerbated, accelerated, or your message might be accelerated, exacerbated because you're a professional basketball player, but your perspective and your experiences, they're what legitimize you. That's what you saw it, you heard it, you were in, LA or the LA area when that happened. So I just want to validate your experiences. We may often feel unqualified. Who hasn't? David,
Right.
Moses, you name them. They felt unqualified,
Right.
but still God puts us together to bring some hope and some good in the world. And so it's kind of interesting that you asked, after talking to your dad and family back in Pella, Iowa, well, who's going to enlighten them? Who's going to go and say something like, oh, crap. No, Jesus, say it ain't so. Say it ain't so. And it might be us.
Please no.
Please no. And that's,
Right.
particularly this time of year, we just say, you know what? We want this cup to pass, but not my will, yours be done. And so I just want to affirm you in this. Again, not because it's flawless, your journey is flawless, or because you want to be this person who's been put on a pedestal, but because you didn't go looking for those experiences, they just happened around you. I think that that's the way we're shaped. Those are sovereign foundations. And I just want you to sit with that, to hold that, to own that, and to realize that, yeah, people might be saying what you need to be doing, but there might be a voice inside saying, this is how I want to shine my light. This is how I want to show my love. Maybe this is how we rectify what Tizzy talked about in his book. Maybe these conversations, these articles, these relationships is how we begin to give people a new perspective of awakened Christians who believe that we are better together, and we're going to talk about it, and we're going to push for it, and we're going to celebrate it, not because it's political, but because it is essential to not only look like the God we believe in, or to honor the God we believe in, but to make the world and the planet a better place. So, man, this has just really been a pleasure to get to know you. And if there's any way I could be support or encouraging you as you continue to think about these issues or wrestle with these issues, man, just know I've got your back in that regard. And still, when all of this COVID-19 stuff lifts and people are healthier and they're better and it's safe to get out again, we got to still connect and double date.
Yeah.
We got to introduce you to some cheese curds, some fried cheese curds. Just one. And some beer. You're in Milwaukee, and some beer.
Yeah, I had that though. That's not true.
You got that. Juliet lets you drink that, but no cheese curds. Sure. I got you, man. Man, so listen, have a good afternoon. Stay in shape, stay healthy, and I just hope by some means y'all can come back in June or July and just bring this thing home to Milwaukee. But I appreciate you, man, on so many levels. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it, brother. Thank you.
Hey, you all, my very special guest has been Mr. Kyle Korver of the Milwaukee Bucks. We've had a very honest and candid discussion about race and race relations. Listen, if you've been struggling to want to understand what it means to be a white ally, the cost of being a white ally, you might have to listen to this a couple of times. You know friends who don't subscribe to Black Like Me. all you got to do is tell your Google Assistant to find it. If you tell Siri to find it, and I know that sounds funny, they really can find podcasts. They really can. They will really do it. In fact, just test it when we get off the air. Just tell Siri to do it. But we need people to begin to listen. This is not a quick fix. It's not an overnight fix. But the time we put into it will determine the fruit we get from it. And we've never been more divided, or it's been a long time since we've been so divided in this country along racial lines. Let's be a part of the solution. So folks, listen, learn, lean in, be transformed, and share this message. Subscribe, support us, and repost it. You retweet it, put it out, because people need to really hear this this very honest dialogue between two men, two brothers, black and white, just talking about steps that we can take, baby steps that can take us in the right direction in this country. Also, take a look at our Patreon page, and please, please, please be safe. There's a lot that's going on in the world, and what you do may determine the health of someone else. Listen, whatever the new normal is, we'll get to it. But if we need to just keep hunkering down for the next few weeks or so, listen, stay with our kids, be safe, tell stories, learn new tactics, but stay in as much as you can, be safe. And the people who are serving us food, delivering food, our male health physicians, health professionals, thank them. Be patient with them, appreciate them. And if you're ordering food and stuff, tip and tip well, because these people are putting their lives at risk to make sure that you got extra pepperoni. So you all take care, have a good day, and thank you for being a part of Black Like Me.
Ooh, Black Like Me, yeah.
I want to thank Corey Saffold for creating the music for this podcast, my podcast manager, Tyler Nyland, engineer and editor, Eli Steenlich, my editor, Jeremy Holliday, and a special thank you to WORT Studios, where we record Black Like Me.
Ooh, Black Like Me.
Thank you for listening to today's podcast. You can find out more about Dr. Alex G's amazing work at www.alexg.com. Black Like Me is sponsored by the generosity of the Human Family Unity Foundation.